Although miscarriages are common, many folk don't understand how devastating this experience can be for those who go through it. You know, this is a grieving process, and we do not always understand what mothers go through and fathers at this particular time. And persons might say to you, you know, oh, it's time to stop grieving, pick up and carry on where you left off. But we are here this evening to let you know that in this grieving process, you can have the space to grieve. And we are here to educate you as to these, what goes on in these processes, the stillbirth, miscarriage, abortions. And we are here not only to educate, but to encourage you and to let you know that there is support that you can have. You don't have to go it alone. There's support that you can have as you reach out to those who are able to help you, counsel you, and encourage you at this particular time in your life.
My name is Lorraine Treble. I'm one of the senior midwives at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I have been at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital for the past 33 years, and before that I did my nurse training and worked as a midwife in England. It's been a wonderful, what, 40 years, shall I say? 40 years. It's been an absolutely wonderful 40 years, and I've enjoyed every single day of it. What I've enjoyed most, and I chose, and maybe it was my calling, was midwifery. Midwifery is such a beautiful area to work. I mean, the one thing, our patients aren't really sick. The second thing is that mothers are going through the most natural experiences in life. And teaching, I enjoy teaching our mothers. I mean, midwifery has its highs and its lows. I'm here today really to talk to you about one of the low parts of midwifery, and that is the loss of a baby. In Barbados, we have the best statistics of live births throughout the whole of the Caribbean. So we very rarely have to deal with death. But there are many occasions when we do have to deal with the death of a baby. Our days consist of swings of highs and lows. We have situations where in the morning you might go on duty and you deliver a beautiful, healthy, bouncing baby to beautiful parents that, you know, with grandparents sitting on the outside so longingly wait to see their baby. And then the next time you might go into another room and there is a lady there who has lost her baby. You then have to adapt your whole persona to deal with this lady. I mean, you can't go into her all, well, I mean, you go to her, but you don't want to be all bouncy and cheerful because you just delivered this live baby, knowing that this lady has lost her baby. But you need to be there to comfort her. It's comfort that she needs. I mean, she's going to be tearful. She's going to have to go through this delivery, knowing at the end of it, her baby's gone. Then we have cases where the baby's heartbeat is there, and then we deliver this baby, and then the baby doesn't survive. Baby was compatible to and living in the mother's stomach, but was not compatible externally. When we have mothers that have lost babies, I mean, sometimes it's important when the baby delivers, if you actually see something, sort of a knot in the cord, or she's had a heavy bleed and her placenta's come away, then you can reassure her. Sometimes you deliver a baby and the baby is absolutely perfect. And then Yeah, well, the baby's actually as perfect, and there's no reason you can't see. I can't see any reason. Mum can't see any reason, but it just is not living. You know, you have to empathize with that mother. I mean, and it's not like we can do it without feeling. You know, I'm just about ready to cry, and I have goose pimples every time because you have to empathize with her. I mean, the deliveries to us is personal as well. And it's just so beautiful when you deliver someone and 20 years later they can sort of still remember you, and you know, they come and cuddle you in the middle of Sheraton and whatever else. But I mean, you still have to empathize with this mother who's lost her baby. Usually, I mean, in midwifery, it's a real personal, touchy-feely. So I mean, if you really need to give her a cuddle and you need to sort of just sit on her bed and hold her hand, we try, if the mother has to go through the whole delivery, to make it as pain-free as possible. So we do give them a lot of sedation if that's what they want. Because, I mean, usually, I mean, you're not going to say the labour because her baby has died is going to be any quicker. It's still going to be painful. And the fact that she will not have a baby at the end of it, we want to sort of, you know, make that a lot less traumatic for her. Sometimes the mums are blaming themselves, you know, why me, why me, why me? And the whole scenario of, you know, they feel guilty. Maybe they've done something wrong, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done this. And you have to alleviate that as soon as possible. You know, allow the mum to know that she is not to blame. She is not to blame for whatever happened. It is kind of very traumatic for us to deal with, because sometimes you can't explain why it's happened. You can just give her the comfort at the time. Then she will have a lot of questions, you know, what did I do wrong? Kind of, she's going to feel devastated, you know, she's going to feel shock initially at the horror. She can't believe that she's got to go through all of this. So, you know, as a woman who's probably had a baby, I mean, has had a baby before, then you're going to know that. Feel for her, feel for her. You're going to feel for her because you're human as well. So then you just have to listen to her, be with her, make it as humane a situation as you possibly can in any way. You have to feel for the fathers as well. I mean, they are so forgotten sometimes, but you have to remember it's his child too. So, I mean, if he needs to be in the room, then I will always allow him to be in the room. I will always keep them both and him well informed about what steps we're taking next, okay? And allow him to air his views as well. Allow him to cry. Sometimes we're all three of us in there crying together because, you know, her hopes and dreams have now been dashed. I mean, she's, you know, planned this pregnancy, looking forward to being a mother, looking forward to taking a child to school, looking forward to the christening, to the birthday, to the weddings, and now there isn't going to be any.
My name is Debbie Ann Weeks. Many of you may know me in a different capacity, but this evening I just want to share an experience which is personal to me, but it's not a stranger to many women out there. On the 11th of June 2014, I was not feeling well and I had to go to the doctor. And when there, the doctor decided, hey, some of these symptoms look familiar, maybe I should run a test. And he decided to do a test, and then he shared what would be good news for most people. I was pregnant, and that would have been with my second son, well, child. At that time I didn't know his gender, but my second child. So unexpected news, but the Lord blesses. So just like any expectant mother, you know, the first trimester you try to keep quiet and you try to make sure nothing happens, because having suffered a miscarriage a couple years ago, I didn't want to experience the same thing again. Like any other expectant mother, I would have done my shopping. I traveled to New York. I bought my baby stuff. I sourced bassinet. I had my first son's strollers still there. So I was all ready and prepared to expect this new baby boy. On December 23rd, 2014, I attended what would have been my second last prenatal check at my gynecologist. Listened to the heartbeat of my son, looked at him on the monitor and everything, kept feeling him moving and everything. Later that evening, 23rd of December, Christmas morning service is coming up. I went to the hairdresser myself with my mom, and my hair was finished, and I was waiting on my mom to get hers finished. And I said, well, I'm not feeling, somehow I don't feel right. So my hairdresser asked me if I wanted to lie down. I said, no, I'll wait it out, I'll wait it out. Mommy soon finished, I'll wait it out. So when she was finished, we got into the car, and I'm driving. On the way down, I said, Mommy, I don't feel right. What I'll do, I'll go by my cousin's house, which is in St. Michael, because we live in St. Thomas. I'll go by my cousin's house and get one of my cousins to drive me to the hospital and see what's going on. Somehow I didn't make it there. And Kalmara, I had to pull over. So I really wasn't feeling well. And from that point, I was bleeding. Well, I'm in Kalmara. I have to get to the hospital, and Mom cannot drive. So I had no other choice but to get back into the car and drive myself to the hospital. Because I said it doesn't make any sense trying to go to my aunt's house in St. Michael, then to get to the hospital. Because the amount of blood I saw, I know I had to get to the hospital urgently. And I figured it would be faster to drive myself than to wait on an ambulance. So I was able to drive myself to the hospital. I got out of the car in front of accident and emergency. Mom got out, she ran inside, and she said, help, help, call for help. And I started to walk inside, and I guess a patient that was there said, oh there, look at her. And that's the last memory I really have of getting there. God is faithful. God will give me the ability to at least get to the hospital safely without crashing that car or hurting anyone. So that was where I needed to get to. So my next memory is on the inside now, where I'm on a bed inside accident emergency, and they're checking, of course, my vitals as well as the baby's vitals. And I guess between consciousness and unconsciousness, I heard that they weren't getting the heartbeat. And within my spirit, I started to pray. At that time, my concern was my child, not knowing that my life was also in the balance. I mean, I guess I took it for granted that I would survive this situation, but God had me in control. My blood type is rare, and it just so happens that there was one bag of that blood type available at the hospital at that time. So my life, as much as it was in the balance, God had made provision ahead of time. As I said, they weren't hearing a heartbeat, and in between consciousness and unconsciousness, I would have seen different doctors, and apparently my gynecologist has a reputation at the hospital. So from the time they heard who my gynecologist was, they called him up. And I know that the resident or the attending gynecologist at the hospital was there, And then at times I would see my gynecologist. There's a point where I remember him telling me, well, there's nothing they can do for the baby, and I would have to deliver the baby. My due date would have been 15 days later, so the baby had come full term, basically, so I had to deliver my son. And you would hear me constantly refer to him as my son because that's how I see him. It was not easy knowing that after 9 months you had carried this child, and as I said, that morning I had visited the doctor, heard his heartbeat, seen him on the monitor, seen him moving, felt him moving during the day, and all of that, to know that now I would not be able to take my son home. My husband, I guess he would have been at the hospital by then. So after, I remember actually doing the pushing and so on. And after the delivery, he would have been in there with me and my son. And I told him, I need to be able to hold my child. So I know I wasn't even able at that time to sit up in the bed, but I wanted to be able to hold my son. And he took him out of, because they would have, I had my go bag at the same cousin in St. Michael, because that was my closest point to the hospital. So I knew that even if I was at work or if I was at home, I could get my go bag and get to the hospital. So they had brought the go bag. Well, unknowns to me, I don't know who parked my car, but unknowns to me, they had, my cousin had collected the car and carried it to their house, and brought the go bag at the same time. So they had the go bag. So my son was wrapped in, he was dressed in one of the jumpers. It was not the jumper I had for his first day, because, well, it wasn't me dressing him, and a towel instead of one of the blankets. I guess the nurse or whoever would have done that thought that was best. So my husband would have handed my son to me, and I would have held him for a few seconds until I didn't have any more strength to hold him. So he would have taken him and put him back into the crib or bassinet, whatever it is called. There's not much recollection after that. I know that eventually was moved to a room, and by then it would have been Christmas Eve. So my son would have been born, because as much as I got to the hospital, probably after 10 o'clock on the 23rd, my son was born on December 24th, 2014. I don't have much recollection of the time after. While I was down in, I guess, is the delivery area, I would have asked my husband to call another a member of the church who I rely on a lot. She would have happened to be the first member of the church that saw when my first son was born. She was on duty, she's a nurse, and she was on duty, and she saw my family coming to visit me when my first son was born. And all during this pregnancy, you know, as a nurse, she would be checking on me and so on. So I asked either my husband or my mom, my mom is a strong woman. She did not leave that hospital. She was by my side when she could be. And I don't know how she was able to, but she was there. And Sister Cheryl Waldron would have answered, and as soon as she heard I was down there, she came down. So she came down expecting to see another baby in my hands, but as soon as I saw her, tears started to flow. And she has been blessed with a spirit of compassion. So she came and she comforted me, she talked to me, and so on, you know. She would have recommended the bereavement support group at the church for when I was out of the hospital. After that, I have very little recollection of even being moved up to my room, but I would have been, yes, in the section of the hospital where mothers come with babies, but I was in a room by myself, a private room by myself, so I wouldn't have been interacting with persons or with new parents and babies. And as I said, I was by myself, and that time alone is, I guess, for any person going through what I was going through, was a hard time. You're by yourself. My family would have gone on home, I guess, to freshen up and so on. But you're in a room by yourself, having gone through such a major loss. By that time, my eyes were hurting. My head was hurting. I had cried, I guess, non-stop. And every now and then, the question why would pop into my head. And something kept telling me, don't question why. Don't ask God why. And I know it's natural, we want to know why. But somehow it kept telling me, don't ask God why. So I was crying, bare my soul to God, all by myself. As I say, it's those times where you realize there's nobody that can truly understand what you're going through other than God. So I spent all that time alone, talking to God, you know, telling him how hurt I was, having not or expecting to be pregnant, as financially sound as you may feel you are. A new child is an expense, and you know, I've bought all these things and prepared for. I had set up the area. I had actually moved back down by my mother because where we were living needed some refurbishment, and I didn't want to carry the new baby into that house. So I had moved back home with my mom just, I think, 2 months before. So after going through all that, it was hurting, and I told God that, and you know, God is peace. He comforted me. Nobody understands how you get through these things. I remember even calling another person that, to me, they were a strong Christian, somebody who I could go to when I had issues and so on. And that person told me, I can't deal with this. At that time, and even up to the years after, I was like, I guess I was being selfish with my grief. I was thinking, but it's not you that just lost a child. Even 2 years ago, somebody told me, I really can't deal with it. And I'm like, but it's not you. But that's something God has been dealing with me about, that grief does not only affect the person that actually suffers the loss, it affects all those around them. People do not understand that grief is multifaceted and it affects all those around you. So it's something God has dealt with me over the years since I lost my son. But as I said, not being able to rely on certain people and that time alone with God, that was valuable to me. People ask me how I am able to deal with it. Up to now, as I tell you, I refer to him as my son. In the house, when we are talking, sometimes I would tease my other son about his brother. I give my son a name, and my son is Asir Paul Joash, and I always refer to him when I'm talking to other people as Asir. Sometimes they are like, he's not, my first son's name is Asher. So people like wonder if sometimes if I'm calling, mixing up the names. But no, I said, no, my other son. And people don't understand how I have dealt with this situation. Even I would have, Asir would have died the Tuesday, the Wednesday was Christmas, I was still in hospital. The Sunday after that, that was, members of the church would know that's the Sunday when our founding pastor was lying in state at the church. And I said I had to be at church that Sunday. And I came out to church. Our family is a big family. We usually have Christmas dinners, Christmas lunch all together, alternating homes. So that year was at my aunt's house. And when my mom and husband and my son, they would have gone to Christmas morning service and visited me at the hospital. Then they went home and told me they're coming back. By the time they came back, by the time they got home, I was calling to tell them I had received my discharge. And when they came back, they asked me, are we going home? I said, no, I'm going to our family luncheon. And I know when I got there, a lot of people would have been surprised. You know, people would have been treating you with kids' gloves, but I didn't want to be treated as a victim. I didn't want to be treated as if, hey, something big and disastrous had happened in your life. Yes, it is a big and disastrous event, but I wanted to be treated as still the same person. So I went to the Christmas luncheon, we stayed, we had our lunch, we did our games and so on. The normal family activities we would have engaged in. But back to the Sunday, I said I have to go to church. And I came to church, I was able to find a seat. Just in front of where I usually sit. And I was in the service. Our worship was going on. I can't remember the name of the song, but the chorus goes, he gives and takes away, he gives and takes away. But still my heart will choose to say, blessed be the name of the Lord. And that broke my heart. Fresh, I was worship, before I was in worship and everything, but when that song started, and we got to that chorus, I had to sit and compose myself because it was what my heart was saying. The Lord had given me the son that I had not asked for, and he had just taken that son away from me. But still, I was choosing to say, blessed be his name. Because in the midst of it all, midst of how much pain I was going through, God was still worthy of praise. And the senior pastor at that time, he would have known, because he was a neighbor of my father, so he would have known what happened. So he came down, he offered some comfort. So I had to go to the bathroom, you know, to compose myself and get back into the right spirit. And on the way back inside the church from the bathroom, a sister asked me, why are you at church? Why you don't take some time? I don't know how you could be here when you just lost your child. And I didn't answer at that time, but in my mind I'm saying, where else should I be? The church is the hospital for those who are brokenhearted, for those who are hurt and who life has battered. That is the best place to be when you're brokenhearted. That's just a plug as well. The church is the place for those who are hurt. Every church should be a hospital for those who are brokenhearted and wounded. Jesus came for those who are brokenhearted and wounded, and the church is where we come to meet with him. I mean, we should meet with him at home, but the church is the place we should go when we are brokenhearted. So up to today, people ask how I deal with it, how I'm so strong about it. But it's that time alone with God. That time where the memories come back. Christmas, I guess most people think might be hard for me, but it's not hard. I might not do as much as I used to, because that experience taught me the fragility of life and the fragility of time to prioritize. But it's not as hard as people would think it is, because I know I've equated that experience with Christ, God sending Christ on earth to die. God sacrificed his son and he took my son. So it is not as hard as people would say. I will say also, to help me deal with it, for my first son, a photographer would have visited me in the hospital. Surprising, my aunt sent a photographer, brought a photographer when I was getting my discharge with my first son. So I have pictures of my son in the hospital, my first son Asher. And what I did with Asir is that I said, and that photographer would have created a booklet for me, a memento. So I said with Asir, I must have a memento. So I would have gotten pictures taken of him when he was in the incubator. Around, I would have had to wait, they had to do an autopsy and so on, why you don't know. So after that was done and it was given the discharge, the permission to bury my son, I did a full funeral service, because as I say, he was my son, a living, well, a person. So I went through the full process of a burial, and I took photos of that service. I thank Pastor Jewel for being there at that time. She would have conducted Asir's service, and as I said, I took pictures of the whole service and so on. So I have a memento of his short time on earth. as I said, I refer to him as Asir. We talk about him at home. And I would have referred to the fact that God always told me, don't ask why. Just later that year, after I returned to work, another colleague, another teacher at my school would have been pregnant. And then she too she had a miscarriage. And I was able to, share my experiences with her and comfort her. Then there are other people who we would have been able to talk to over the years. And I was asked late last year to do this interview, I assume is this one. And I would have said no, because it's easy to share one-on-one, to sit down with someone and share. But to share with what will be the whole world, is a different situation. And then I guess the second person that asked me didn't know that the first person asked me. And when they came and asked me to do this interview, I again said no. And I serve a God that there are times I'm like, oh, okay. And he would have whispered in my ears, why are you saying no? Somebody needs to hear. And I didn't know it would be so emotional for me. Because as I say, I have been strong. I'm able to talk about my son at home and so on. But I guess talking about it brought up some other pain that probably need to be addressed. But in a nutshell, a very long nutshell, that has been my experience with what people have termed a stillbirth. One experience I must share is that I was given, what was used to be the Green Carrier de Bleu book for newborn babies, and I was told, yes, I can go and register my son. So I went to registry and I registered the birth of my son and eventually got a birth certificate. So then for personal reasons, I wanted a death certificate. So I went to apply for a death certificate. And I was told I had to return the birth certificate because stillbirths are not given a birth certificate. There's a registration of stillbirth that they're given, certificate that they're given. So I couldn't receive a death certificate because it was a stillbirth. So that's one area. I understand the technicality of it, but there was one area that had me a little upset, because as I say, I view it as if from conception, in my opinion, that's a birth, a child. So the fact that in the eyes of the government, only a child who is born alive is counted as a individual. That's how I see it. To me, that's not so. I don't know if there's another way they can do it, but just as information for those out there, whoever go through this, it is not you don't apply for a birth certificate. There's a registration of stillbirth. Anyone who has gone through this in the past and might still be dealing with the emotions, or who may go through this in the future, I encourage you to spend time with God. To help me, I would have spent a lot of time praying. The people in my house told me that I did a lot of cleaning. But I guess that was something that kept me grounded. But I would encourage you to spend a lot of time praying and talking with God. If there's anybody you can find to speak to, I encourage you to do that. And don't bottle it. Be free to talk about how you feel, how it's affecting you. Even sometimes now I would go to mommy and I would tell her anything that I'm feeling in that regard, because as a teacher, you know, every day you're with children and you see sometimes not the best parenting skills, and it's like, well, Lord, I would have done a better job. And it's important to have that person that you can bounce off your emotions with. God is there, as I said, spend time praying with Him, but as also you can find someone. I wouldn't have contacted the bereavement group at my church because I had, as I said, I had a support system at home. But if you don't have that support system and you know that you need somebody to talk to, I would encourage you to call our 429-2145, and somebody there will be able to get you in contact with a member of the bereavement group. But in a nutshell, I would say make sure you spend a lot of time with God. There are many scriptures that encourage you that He is there, He's your comforter. I always think of God as like the mother hen with His arms around the chicks. When you're hurting or when you're in danger, that's when He enfolds you. So I would encourage you to spend as much time talking to God and let Him know how you are feeling. He already knows, but it's important for you to be honest with Him and not hide, not try to deal with it by hiding it up, but be able to expose how you feel.
So as a midwife as well, I mean, I know people kind of think that us nurses are quite hardened by everyday duties, but we're not. We're human as well, and we have feelings. I mean, some nurses do react differently, you know. I mean, I know that I've heard some awful things said about midwives, but then sometimes they're carrying the pain of the patient as well, and due to lack of maturity, I would say, and the lack of invested time and experience, and they don't know how to process those feelings. So sometimes it might come out that they're sharp and they're angry. I say to my girls that you can cry with the mother. I mean, you can't go out bawling, of course, but you know, sometimes you shed a tear to show that you are empathetic in the situation. You know, I mean, I have had to go into rooms and taken over from some of my nurses where they are so devastated to go back into the room. Especially that we have times when obviously the baby hasn't come out dead, you know, but maybe he's what we call aspirated meconium. Sometimes the babies have meconium stool, and sometimes the babies will go and then the stool goes into the baby's lungs. All right, so the baby will come out, he will go cry, he'll be crying and everything, and then we have to take him down to the pediatrician to make sure that they suck out all this meconium. And then the baby's not making it, not doing well in the room, and mum's in there and she's anticipating, you know, her baby coming back to her. And sometimes the doctors are there and they're resuscitating the baby and they're trying their best, but it's just out of all our hands. But now you've got to go back to that room and tell the mum, you know, we've had your baby down there for a few 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but the baby's gone. You can imagine how we must feel to have to tell a mother that. You know, so then at that time, I mean, her hopes and dreams were there. The baby cried, she heard the baby cry, we've had to rush the baby out of the room. And then that was the last time she saw her baby alive. And then we've done all that we possibly could to try and keep that baby alive. And then the tragedy. It's heartbreaking for us. It really is heartbreaking for us. And as I said, I've had to take over from some nurses, especially the junior nurses, because they are so devastated. And then I've allowed her to go and cry and wipe her tears and be hushed by someone else, and then we can go through that scenario later, but it's the mother that needs the attention now. If her mother's outside, then of course we will allow her mother to come in. So even though we say that one person should be in the room, sometimes we can scrap those ideas. We have ideas, or we have these rules set out in black and white, but all these black and white rules are to be molded to suit each individual. So whatever it takes to comfort that individual is what we will do, all right? Sometimes, well, not sometimes, but all the time, we will, wash, wipe, dress the baby, give the baby back to the mother, allow them to be parents for the short time, allow them to bond, because you can still bond with that baby even though it's deceased. She's going to be so tearful, so heartbroken in that particular scenario, in every particular scenario. She's going to be heartbroken. So we allow them time to spend with their baby. We can dress the baby, we've got to weigh the baby, everything else. Allow them to be, encourage them to take photographs, videos even, if they want to, hold the baby's hand. And we do encourage mums to do this because it makes closure better. I mean, you might get some mums that, I don't want to see it, I don't want to see it, I don't want to see it. But we will leave the baby wrapped up in the room, and we will guard and watch them and ensure that she does, say goodbye to the little one. And then we've got little stamps where we can stamp the little footprint, stamp the hand, even give her a lock of hair. Encourage them to make memories in the little time that they have together. Talk to the baby, sing to the baby, be there for the baby. Then when the baby is taken away, then we take the baby away when the mother is ready, because sometimes she will say, you can take the baby now, and then we will take the baby away. The baby will go downstairs to the morgue, and then as the baby remains in the morgue, the parents can see the baby at their request. Before mum goes home, then we will leave mummy and dad in the room for as long as they wish to stay in the room before she now has to go to the ward. We don't put her on the postnatal ward. She will go to the gynae ward where there are no babies, and she won't hear the cry of the babies, because you can imagine how awful that would be if we put her back on the postnatal ward. Anyway, so before she goes home, she has to see the hospital social worker, and one of us can go down with her to go and see the hospital social worker. We still are able to talk to the mother about her grief, and then also tell her, especially if it's a first-time mum, that she's still going to have the lochia, she's still going to have the after pain, she's still going to have, if she had to have stitches, the stitches heal. We always give them our ward number as well, so that they can call back with anything at all. With the hospital social worker, normally gets them in touch with the funeral directors. The funeral directors are absolutely great, because they are in that role, in that emotional environment where they can actually guide the mother through her feelings and fears and what she's experiencing. Usually we normally sort of tell mums to make sure that the funeral that they have is personal to them. There's no wrong or right way of doing it. Whatever you feel is the best for that mother and that father is good. Keep keepsakes, keep memories. I always name the child, and they say, oh, I don't want to give it the name that I had. A nice Christian name is good, but the child is always to be remembered. It's always going to be a part of mum. It's always going to be a part of my experience as a midwife. So I mean, I like to think of little Christopher, who maybe lived for a few minutes, or little Christopher that came out pale and still. or little Christine, and then, you know, I dock that into my memory and will always remember that. And then, you know, with me, I mean, that will stay with me for a long time.
My name is Barbara Murray Spooner. I am a British trained midwife, registered nurse, teacher of midwives. Came to Barbados, but I should say came back home. Came back home in 1990 and started work at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in the obstetric department, because that was my specialty in England, and that was the only thing that I had said I would ever do. I wasn't going to do anything else. And in 1991, working with the ladies, I was very concerned that at that time, mothers were sent off to the obstetric ward, B3, B2, wherever, after they had a baby that had died. It could be a stillbirth, whatever. So we all get together and we discuss it to see what we could do about it. And at the time, it was some research came out about this same issue in Barbados. And we then joined Deanne Sobers. She was working at the same place. And we joined together, and that is how the bereavement support service was started. Deanne was doing general bereavement, and I was just with others looking after stillbirths, neonatal deaths, and abortions. And I have been there as a volunteer from 1991 when I came home, and still am up to this moment. But obviously because of COVID, we're closed down at the moment. But I will still see, no, I'm not seeing any persons. I am speaking to them over the phone. Well, every patient that has a stillbirth has to be seen by social worker or a bereavement counselor before they go home, because of the follow-up that they need to go through. They're given an appointment for the postnatal clinic to come back in 6 weeks just to get the regular check as any pregnant woman will get, to ensure that everything is going all right and to see what other social help they need. If they make an appointment for the stillbirth group, then that information will be phoned over to us at NAB, and we will know that they're coming. When they come to the group, obviously they're invited to share what they feel comfortable to share. We do not pry, we do not interfere, and we do not take sides. We just let them know that we are there, and the good thing that there are other there are other ladies there who's been through the same thing that they're going through now, so that is nice for them. Because the important thing is, as me, I've never had a stillbirth, but I know how to deal with it theoretically. But the mothers that are there, they are the ones that actually live through it, and they have a good handling on it. So most of the time I would just speak to them about the anatomy and the physiology, which I could explain to them what went wrong in those areas. And then the person that actually went through it would say, well, I thought I was going mad or something because I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't do this. And then this person that now come would say, you know what happened? That is the same thing that is happening to me, and I thought I was imagining it. So you see that it's where the practical help come in. Grief is something that we are never prepared for, and people will try to tell you, don't cry, don't listen to them, just cry, bawl your eyes out, shout if you want to. Because there's one way of getting over your grief, and make sure you take care of yourself, because you're going to be feeling days you're going to be up on the mountain top, and in the same day you can be down in the valley. So you need to look after yourself. You can think support is so important. And dads, I like you to cry too and let the mother see that you're crying. This is one of my ladies in the group. She said he didn't want the baby because he never cried. But the poor man used to go up in the bathroom and cry. So when these things happen, you're one together, and show your oneness. Cry. Men, you always feel you're too big to cry, but you're too big to cry, you hurt. And what hurt will make you cry. So you can pass this on to the men, that they need to cry, and they need to let their partner see that they're crying and they're hurting and they love that baby. And then some people, obviously, they're angry with God because they always say, but God is so important, and he's so powerful, and he could have saved my baby and he didn't. And you don't tell them, don't say that, you just let them say it. Because later on, when you meet with them, they're going to laugh and say, you remember the day that I said God? And you tell me don't to go on, tell God what you think about him, because God knows what you think. And you tell God what you think, and then later on, you're going to laugh and get over it. And then when your turn comes to talk to somebody that is going through the same thing you went through, because everything that we go through, it's a learning experience for us. And we'll come back and say, don't look at the bad thing that happened. Look and see what good can I do now. I remember one mother saying to me, well, now I can go out and I can tell somebody what it's like and how I deal with it, and it wouldn't bring back my baby, but it would help somebody to be able to go out and tell another person how to care for persons who lost babies.
I just wanted to just let the mums know that even though they're going through the grieving process, the hormones are a great thing a part of it as well, because your body's changing from being pregnant, and often some people have heard about postnatal depression, and that can also be brought on by hormones. So if you find that this depression is extending itself, then it's important to seek medical advice. Now, in these modern days, we can give mums a medication before they leave hospital in order to prevent them from actually producing milk. But that used to be a big thing as well for mums, because they're producing all this milk and they've not got a baby to give it to. Yeah, so, you know, there's plenty out there. Anyway, so I just want to reiterate how it is for us. As a midwife, as a very, very junior midwife, I did my training, oh my God, 83? Oh, 83, yeah, I trained as a midwife. Aspirations of being a midwife was just so high. Anyway, we did our training in England, and we had to do 40 deliveries. And when I did, everybody's so excited when you go to do your first delivery. I had in England, we used to have like family rooms where you could have your children in the room, your parents, both sides in the room, your partner in the room. Anyway, so first delivery, and my mum was there, her partner was there. They just got married, both in-laws were there. And we were doing this. I had a beautiful, beautiful midwife with so much experience. Anyway, we did this delivery and everything was well. She had a beautiful labor. She didn't need epidural. She had, you know, a short second stage. And then this baby was delivered and this baby was still. We heard the fetal heart, no problems with the fetal heart through the pregnancy. And then this baby came out and it wouldn't take a first breath. And we rubbed the baby's toes, and we rubbed the baby's feet, and we, you know, looking at each other and you think, why is this baby not crying? Jesus, why is this baby? The fetal heart we just heard was strong and it was good. Anyway, so off we go. We called the pediatricians and we tried to resuscitate this baby, but it just never took a first breath. And then obviously we went back into the room to tell the parents that it was a little girl. Her name was Elizabeth, Mum called her. And we went back into the room and to tell the family that Elizabeth didn't make it. And then the wails from those parents, I was brokenhearted. I just thought, God, if this is, I didn't anticipate this part of midwifery. I didn't even think that babies died at birth. You know, I was so naive at the time. I just imagined bundles of joy every time you went into a delivery room. And right at that very first moment, my very first delivery ended in tragedy. I nearly packed up my bags and left midwifery. And if it wasn't for the encouragement of my midwife that was present with me, I don't know that I would have done it, you know, because I didn't sort of stack the cards up for tragedy. It was just happy moments. I kind of think that has made me, from that very beginning, has made me a stronger midwife, because right from the get-go I realized that it's not all happy, that it's not all, you know, bouncing babies and handing them to mums, that in that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sphere there is sadness and tragedy. And yeah, so I've come to realize right from the start, and do I thank God for that? I do, because I have this empathy with mums that have had, you know, loss of babies, and I feel that, you know, not that I want to go in there and take over, but I feel that I can offer them comfort. I can offer them comfort, I can offer them serenity, I can just offer them myself, just to be there with them through this traumatic time. Yeah.
Holy Spirit, I come to you this evening and asking you, Lord, that you will minister your healing and comfort to anyone who may be experiencing grief at this time, having gone through a stillbirth or a miscarriage. Oh God, I ask your strength, I ask your healing virtue to flow through them. I ask that they will sense the undergirding of your comfort and your strength at this time. And Father, I pray that they may know that they are not alone, but that you are with them and that they have others who can come alongside of them and help them and support them through this period of their life. Thank you, Lord, for what you're going to do. Thank you for the renewal. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for the restoration. We give you praise and we give you thanks. Amen.